Hi, I'm Virginia Spielman. I'm the Associate Director here at STAR Institute for Sensory Processing Disorder in Colorado. And this is the third part of the three-part series about managing challenging behaviors. And again, a lot of this material is coming from other resources. So the first thing I want to point you towards is Diane Cullinane's excellent book. We will put a link so that you can find it really easily. Behavioral Challenges in Children with Autism and Other Special Needs. It's a developmental approach, and much of what I'm saying is really inspired by this book, which really resonates with the STAR frame of reference. It's very much in synchrony with how we like to support children here, but it organized my thinking about this so nicely, and it gives three really nice manageable steps, which is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to expand on the 3 steps for supporting challenging behaviors in the moment, and we will touch a little bit on managing aggression, but obviously we're not going to solve all of the world's problems in the next 10 or so minutes. So this is just a start of the conversation, and I'd love to, if you want to learn more, encourage you to read this book. But also ask questions in the comments, and let's see what discussion happens going forward from here. We talked in the first week, the first part of this series, about really needing to look at the behaviors as communication of something going on deeper down, as the tip of the iceberg, and we were talking about being detectives and really asking what's going on. We talked as well previously about really what defines a challenging behavior, and that some behaviors that we're uncomfortable with, that might be our responsibility to deal with our own stuff, and rather than impose that on the child. So when we're talking about challenging behaviors, we're not talking about compliance and normalization type goals. We're talking about really when our children are out of control, unhappy, they might be in a place of rage, anger, and complete dysregulation, and how do we support them to make better decisions. And also just to really establish where we're coming from with this, that when we're helping our children with challenging behaviors, we're not just punishing them, we're not just making them feel bad. This isn't just consequence-driven approach to managing challenging behaviors. It's saying this is an opportunity for learning, and we want our children to develop more sophisticated ways of managing the external world and their own emotional responses to the things that happen inevitably in life. So challenging behaviors as teaching opportunities, and discipline only as a way of teaching and supporting and helping. That word helping, we're helping our children. We're coming alongside and collaborating. And so how do we do that? Well, there are 3 basic steps that we touched on in part 2, and they are attunement. Step 1, attuning to the child what's going on and helping them all get organized, organizing the affective experience. And then there's also helping the child, second point, to move back up the developmental ladder. So we help them recover, and then we help them hopefully regain their baseline, and we want ultimately them to level up a tiny bit each time. As much as is realistic developmentally. So for teachers, think about Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. For OTs, think about the Just Right challenge. We're thinking about that little place of growth that should be available in every organic, everyday experience. And then the third step is coming to a genuine resolution of the event. So that true repair that we want to happen. And that may not happen in the moment. We talked about that as well. That might need to take place later. And often we want our kids to move very quickly to saying sorry. But what we're saying with this sort of approach is that true repair happens after everyone's had time to take a really deep breath, process, and get to that place internally rather than as imposed by an adult from the outside. So attunement, helping, and resolve and repair are really what we're talking about. So what does attuning and organizing mean? Right, well, first of all, make sure everything's safe. immediately stop the aggression. And we talked about, as adults, putting on the brakes a little bit and trying to really figure out what's going on for the child. And so what often happens when we see aggressive behavior is that our arousal goes awry and we get dysregulated as adults. And so if we can put on the brakes in the moment, take a deep breath and be safe, then we can just take that time to check on what's really going on. And so we're trying to observe the child, be empathetic with the child. What is the child experiencing, feeling, what's going on for them, what's happened in the past that might add more meaning to this particular event? And we're asking those types of questions, and it does take time, but you'll be surprised the amount of time it takes to put the brakes on and think like that is actually minimal. It feels effortful at first when you're really practicing. In fact, let's be real, it feels effortful a lot of the time. But in the longer run, it does save time as hopefully our children learn. And so these resolutions come faster, and then eventually our children are able to control their impulsive responses to things. That's our ultimate goal, isn't it? Is that they're problem solvers and social problem solvers. So we're attuning to the child. We're giving ourselves time to say, what is this child's experience right now? What's going on for the child? So not just that they're a bad kid, right? What's really going on? What do we know about the child in this context? And what are this child's individual differences? And this is where we really want to think about potentially some sensory pieces that might be coming in and being disorganizing here. So a great example of this might be in the school cafeteria, where there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of hustle and bustle and touch, there's a lot of unpredictability, there's a lot of visual stimulation, and something small might get a response from a child or student that looks aggressive. But if we can take into account that, hang on top of everything else that this child is dealing with right now, that wasn't a small thing, then we can help with that attuning and organizing. This first step, we can go, whoa, this is a lot for you right now. And we can just take that moment to recognize all of those pieces. And so a really important question in this step one is just asking, does the child who's historically seen as the aggressor, but does this child with the challenging behavior feel safe right now? Does that child feel safe, as well as everyone else in the situation? So when we talk about safety, we're not just talking about maybe the person on the receiving end of the challenging behavior, but also this child. Do they feel safe? Do they feel secure? What do these relationships feel like for this child? Are they in a state of fight or flight? Are they feeling threatened? What is their nervous system? How is their nervous system processing what's going on right now? Is this child's body trying to keep the child alive, right? So safety is one of these pieces in the first step. So what we do is we ask those questions, and then we just kind of try to join the child in that moment. That tells them a lot of things. It tells them that this is a tolerable experience because you as an adult are modeling that you can tolerate this. Okay, so that's kind of a big thing here. Often we move very quickly to soothing our children, and we don't really show them that these big emotions are tolerable. And so they don't know that this is actually okay. We can be here and we'll still be alive and safe and okay the other side. So we join the child and we be with them. It also has the child come to a place where they feel really heard, when we can just join them in that moment. So we would use sincere emotional messaging to really show empathy and understanding with that child. And we need to find a way to be sincere. And an example I often think of is when a child says to their mother, "I hate you." And the mother goes, "Well, I love you too." And the words really don't match what's going on for the mum. And so how do we respond differently? Well, we might say something like, that must be really hard. That feels so difficult. And that's just really a different way of coming into these things. So joining the child and being with them in the moment and sincerely meeting what's going on with them, that's part of this step 1. And so we might provide them with information to help them feel heard, that you're with them, and get organized. And so that might be nonverbal. It might just be going, whoa. It might be saying, wow, that's a lot. This feels difficult. Often there's fewer words. It's a lot about your voice, your face, your pacing of your body, your movement. But this is about organizing, helping them know that this experience is tolerable, that you acknowledge where they're at, that they're heard. And this helps them get to that kind of that state control, that level of arousal where we want them to recover to regulation. Okay, so there's all and we have to get to regulation before we go anywhere else. And if all you can do is step 1, then that's okay, because if we're dysregulated and our nervous system has taken over, our upstairs brain is not online, and we are not able to be logical and reasonable and say sorry in a way that helps us to learn why on earth we should be sorry. So that recovering that state of regulation is really important. So we want to get to that place of emotional organization, and that the nervous system, the physiological response we're recovering. And that might take a little bit of time with some of our kids. It might take a long time. But doing that with them, being with them, sitting with them while they recover can be really important. And then they can start to have shared attention because they're recovered. Their upstairs brain is starting to come online more. Their limbic system is in a more level place. They can acknowledge what else is going on in everyone else's world, and they can start to be organized in their emotional response. So an example for this, for me, is a child who has a splinter and they need to have the splinter taken out. Right? And that's a painful thing, and they don't want to do it, and they get really, really crazy upset. And if you try and shout them down and meet them in their crazy place, then you're never going to get that splinter out. But if you're able to go, whoa, this feels really awful right now, and just and they can go, yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you. And then you can say, you're really telling me you don't want the splinter taken out. And they're like, oh, that kind of language, if they can internalize that helps our emotional arousal come down. And then you're able to say, I hear that you don't want it to be taken out, but we have to take it out because of your safety. It's the right thing to do, and I'll try and make it hurt as little as possible. So, and that's what I mean by it feels like it takes a little bit of time and effort to support children in this way, but actually in the long run, hopefully it's time effective, because you get the splinter out, and you don't have to all have timeouts and different things afterwards. So there's just that kind of different way of doing things, that way around. So we want our children to recognize that their no is being heard. Consent is a huge issue, and it's still an issue in these challenging behaviors that, we need to respect that when our children say no, and we need to show respect for that, and that whether they consent to something or not, and then we need to help them organize that global distress and connect with why something may still need to happen if it really does. So being organized around particular feelings so that we can get to that place is really, really important. So step 2 is help. And helping begins after the attunement, after we're getting a little bit calmer, we're trying to help the child kind of, you can see there's a developmental progression here. We've helped the child recover. We are now trying to help them, they're at their baseline. We're now trying to help them get a little bit more sophisticated in their thinking, and really what we mean is problem solve. So we want them to be able to express themselves and hear other people. So first of all, they need to express their current experience and feel acknowledged. So you've done the meeting, you've done the nonverbal, you've used your words. Can they use theirs to tell you a little bit more about what's going on? And you say, wow, I really hear you. You hear that. And this takes calm confidence from the parent. And it's not about letting down boundaries. It's not about being permissive. Okay? And so you maintain your safe boundaries, but you also, you know, with your attitude of helping, you just ask them what's really going on. And you can use statements of help in the helping section as well. So you might say, I'm going to hold you and help you stop. Or I'm gonna suggest that we go and sit over here so that we can help you calm down. I'm gonna help you get down from there. It's not safe up there. So you can move from step 1 to step 2 very, very smoothly, very, very quickly in some cases. I'm gonna hold your arms and help. I'm holding your arms because I need to help you stop hitting. So these are statements of helping, and they're the same as saying no, but they're collaborative and they're empowering instead. Helping is respectful of the other person, but also maintaining safety with that calm confidence. And so you might take a break with the child. You might go and sit with them while they recover. A timeout might work in some cases, but often when we put our children in a room by themselves, they're not actually going to get regulated, recover, and learn in the same way as they will in relationships. So we talk about time-ins, we talk about going and having breaks together, and wherever possible, keeping the communication going, keeping the conversation going. And there are ways that you can do that. You can offer choices. We're going to go and take a break. Do you want to do it in the library, or do you want to do it outside the classroom? I don't know, you know, those sort of controlled choices. And then you're being sincere with your gesture and your affect. So I'm trying to not take up too much time as I talk about these different steps, and I'm hoping that there's some interesting discussion happening as you listen to this. We've gone through helping, we've gone through attuning and organizing, and I'm going to quickly jump to resolving. Resolving is when the upstairs brain really has come online. So for some of our children, that happens much further after the event. And for some of them, you can see that you might be able to quite smoothly move from attuning and organizing to helping and to resolving. And what we're thinking about with resolving is helping the child make amends. So that's the real kind of meaningful apology, and also how to function when experiencing these emotions next time. That's step 3. How to function when experiencing these emotions next time is a really key piece of this kind of approach. So we will use whatever supports we can for that child so that they can be calm and organized and logical. So we might need to use sensory motor supports for some of our children with those kind of sensory differences. Comfort, safety based on the relationship. We're looking and reading the signs of that child's physiological states. We're asking them if they're ready, right? And then we're able to go to that next stage. And so we need to help them reflect on what happened in the other child's world as well as what was triggering for them. And we need to help them resume the activities and relationships with grace. Like, how are we going to open the door so that this child can come back in successfully without shaming them, but also having that learning experience? And so we might rehearse the apology with the child. We might wait for them to be ready to really understand why they should say an apology. And I've had children need to go out the room for a few minutes. They're okay, but they just needed that time to process, that processing time. And we honor that. And then they're able to come back in and go, you know what, I am really sorry. I'm disappointed in the way I made that decision. And these are, you know, kids who otherwise would not be capable of such sophisticated language. They might need to actually fix what was broken or replace what was damaged to really understand the consequences. Those are natural consequences of doing something. You fix something that you broke, you replace something that you damaged, you really ask, please forgive me. You give the other person that kind of place of saying, yeah, I forgive you, rather than, I'm sorry, okay? You know, those different types of ways of thinking about things, those are natural consequences to challenging behaviors. They might need to do a good deed. They might need to something that's really connected to what happened. This recovery, repair, and review, and then rehearsing for what happens if it happens again. That kind of reflection might come a lot later. But really what we want is for the child to bring closure to the incident, and then be able to learn, increase their pride. Wow, imagine that being a goal of a situation where there's been aggression or challenging behavior, that the child would feel better coming out of it, and that their self-esteem would grow. We want them to, so those are the 3 steps. We want them to return to that baseline of emotional equilibrium. We want them to be able to be logical, to be online, to think about what happened, and then we want them to be able to repair any harm done to objects or relationships. And then those natural or planned consequences of actions come in as a learning opportunity, so that there's recovery, review, and repair. So those are the 3 steps. We haven't really touched on aggressive behavior yet. Aggressive behavior really needs its own 3-part series, but you know, just really quickly to just talk about the fact that when we're trying to do those 3 steps with a child who's being violent or aggressive, our regulation is one of the most critical things to be mindful of, as well as safety. And so those kind of helping phrases and all of those pieces, you might need someone else to be helping regulate you. It might need to be a 2-adult thing if you have that luxury. But if you meet the child in a dysregulated way, you are definitely fueling the fire, the rage, the anger, especially with our sensory sensitive kiddos. They are often emotionally sensitive too, and they pick up on other people's signals. So we act with that calm confidence, and that's really helpful for this kind of this piece of aggressive and violent behavior. So that the child can access, you can be the frontal lobe for that child, and they can access that sense of safety and security from the limits that you're setting and the calmness that you have. And that can take a while to cultivate. And then in that way you can help the child redefine the experience, and you show that tolerance for what's going on, and you communicate a different perception of what's happening. Maybe it's not as life or death as the child perceives it to be. So safety is always a priority, and containing the child's behavior in a safe way, and you need to check on your policies and what's going on in your area and if you're in a school, but also letting that child know that their emotions are being acknowledged, that they're recognized, and that you're there to help them calm down. Those helping statements are really helpful. So I hope that wasn't too long and it was helpful and you enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading your comments.